All right. Welcome back to Alternative Discussion West, the podcast. This is your host, Ryan Banks, and we are on episode 10. Today, I welcome a close friend of mine here. It's Mr. Aaron Peters, also known as Rev. You guys know him from Success. What's going on, Rev?
Not much, man. I'm stoked to be here.
Welcome, dude. Yeah, when I started this show, I think, I think we talked about doing a podcast, years ago. And really, as soon as I got this show on the road, I started thinking about how much I wanted to have you in here. So I thank you for coming here.
Of course,
and,
man.
I think it's going to be a fun time. So you grow up, where are you born?
I was born in Fort Lewis, an Army base in Tacoma, Washington, to two very young parents.
Father in the military.
Yeah, my dad was already in the military at that point. He originally jumped in because of I have an older sister. So Dad went into the military a little early, and I was born on an Army base. And when I was 2 months old, we moved straight to Alaska.
Okay, on report up there.
Yeah, exactly.
To another air base.
Yeah, I think my parents just wanted to kind of get out. They wanted to go see the world, and they were from originally from like Des Moines Federal Way, Seattle suburbs area, and
so they grew up in Washington as well.
Yeah, totally. My extended family's from like Minnesota. They're all sugar beet farmers out in Minnesota, and I think my parents just wanted to get out. That was the first big thing. Was like the Army said, "Well, do you want to go here?" And Alaska sounded rad to my dad because he was a fisher and a hunter. So
he would take orders wherever if they were going to ship him out and about.
Yeah.
Just basically so he could see new grounds.
Totally, yeah.
And he took that on. So where else did you end up as a kid?
We lived in two different places in Alaska. I was in Alaska until I was like almost 8 years old.
So you did some elementary school there?
Yeah. Ursa Major Elementary.
Wow. Any friends out there still?
No.
Way too young for that. Huh?
No, I mean like we have family friends and stuff, but yeah, that's the weird thing about the military is like people think like, you move every 3 years, and when you do that, you have friends for 3 years, but your friends have already been there for 2 years, and so they're gone out after 1 year. So as a child in the military, you're constantly making friends.
Yeah, it's tough to keep them.
Yeah, and which really probably like kind of crafted my like open personality of like being able to meet people.
Yeah, and your ability to just talk to anybody on the spot.
Necessity when I was a kid. So.
Yeah, you really had to wow them right off the bat.
You're into Ninja Turtles? Dope. Can we hang out?
Whatever you like, I'm right there with you. So you spend some years in Alaska up until you're about 8 years old, and then you spent some time on the East Coast.
Yeah, we moved to Virginia for a couple years.
Okay.
I lived in Newport News, or Bad News, Virginia, as they call it, because it's like a horrible, horrible town.
Really tough times.
Yeah, but my dad is a genius. He's an incredibly smart man, and he's really technically minded. And he was into helicopter mechanics, which is a crazy field to be in. And he became an instructor out there, and he was teaching helicopter mechanics to brand new soldiers in Fort Eustis, Virginia. And
did he serve his entire career in the military?
He did 16 years. He took early retirement because my grandma was getting a little sick.
So. Okay, wow. So life
she's okay, but
awesome to hear.
Yeah. He was teaching out there for a while, and then what he was doing, they needed him to go do in Hanau, Germany. Short after that. After that,
your folks took the opportunity to travel some more. I guess.
My mom, not like besides being one of the most amazing women in the world, is this beautiful, adventurous soul who's like constantly trying to challenge herself, and I think going overseas was like a no-brainer for her. She was like, we have this opportunity, we have to take this opportunity.
Let's do it. Yeah, new challenge. So you get to Germany. How old are you?
Probably around 10 at this point.
10 years old?
Yeah, probably around 10, maybe 11.
And you spend a couple years there?
Yeah, we do. We excuse me. We spent a few years there. My dad goes, and me and my mom are traveling a bunch, going all over, going to France, going to Italy. I spent a little bit of time in Russia. I was on an exchange program. And
is it just you, your mom, and your dad, or is your sister
my sister too
travels also?
Yeah, my sister's there too. And I took this exchange program to Russia, and that was amazing.
Wow.
I stayed in a town called Ivanovo that was just outside of Moscow, about 4 hours outside of Moscow. This small town where they like make like stuff for weapons and tanks and stuff like that.
And you lived on a base there with a family?
No, with a family.
Wow. So you saw some real Russian traditions and culture.
So rad, yeah. It really humbled me at like a preteen age. It was like, wow, the rest of the world is happier with a lot less than you have, so you could probably fucking figure it out with what you have. You know?
Wow, yeah, it's a total culture shock.
Real community driven.
Yeah, so Germany, you're there 3 or 4 years. How long do you spend in Russia? Is that just like a summer program?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And it wasn't a whole lot of time. I wish it was more. I really loved that country.
You would have liked to spend some more time there in Russia. So you come back, Germany, the orders end over there, and your father, family, you guys relocate back into Washington.
Excuse me.
And end up in Enumclaw.
Yeah, we end up leaving Germany and heading out to we went to Virginia for just real quick, and then headed back to Enumclaw. My parents got a house out there because my grandparents lived there. So this is like 8th grade. I would have been.
And this is about the time your dad's he wants to get back around his parents.
Yeah, and so my parents they were, so young when they had kids that kind of, it was passe. It became a dividing line between their families and them. It was kind of a tumultuous thing, because it's not planned, obviously. And so we took off, and I think it was beautiful the way that it happened, because they went and traveled around the world and they did these great things, and they came home with this perspective on their life that family is incredibly important. Because they got
and
that
found
distance.
A respect for it, but also cut their own in that time.
Yeah, and they it was cool because then with no outside, because you're very isolated as an Army family. You have your friends and stuff, but you're traveling all the time. You really only have your core.
Yeah, like you said, you're up and moving every year or two.
Yeah, man, and so they really it really focused us on us, And so when that happened, then we were like, well, we took care of this family. This family's doing good. We need to start, you need to know your grandparents and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's a lot more immediate family to this that you should probably be a part of. So Enumclaw, you're saying, is a dairy town.
Yes, dairy farming town, yeah.
There's farms there. What's the main industry?
There's a lot of logging. Farming and construction are like huge. It's a normal redneck town in the mountains at the base of Mount Rainier.
And what's the population there?
Oh, gosh, I don't
then
even know.
And now. Big city or
no
10,000, 50,000?
I bet it was at 30,000.
Okay.
For a little while, but I don't even know.
But you start high school there, and that's at what high school?
Enumclaw High School.
And you meet David.
Home of the Hornets.
And David, who ends up becoming kind of a musical, just your partner.
Yeah, what happens is I get there in the 8th grade, and the amount of peer pressure in my life was so different from normal kids because I was at different schools all the time. I had a lot more freedom to just do whatever I wanted to because I had no peer group.
Yeah, you didn't have to impress the kids from school. So you in 8th grade, when you start school there in Enumclaw, what are your interests?
So I'm already into punk rock. I was playing drums at the time.
Okay.
I was already really into punk rock. I was into skateboarding. I had bright green hair when I got to Enumclaw, which is this small town where most kids, including David, had been. You go to school with the same kids your entire, school
straight
career.
From kindergarten to the end of high
They
school.
all know each other, And I get there and I've got green hair and Jenkos with a NASA patch on the back.
So you stand out.
Oh man, yeah, like a sore thumb. And so I start. They put me. They asked me about my musical experience, and I had been playing the drums since I was in the 6th grade, and they put me in an advanced band. And I get there, and I'm playing drums, and everybody's better than me.
Yeah,
like way better. And there's one kid specifically who's like giving me shit all the time. He's like laying into me every day, and I start like getting mad. I start
just giving you tips, but kind of saying, "Hey, man, you don't know what
poking
you're doing
me
there."
and
Yeah,
being like, "You suck at this." And after a while, I had come to resent this kid, and I was like, every day, band was no longer my fun class. Like I was bummed. I was like, man, this kid sucks. He's gonna rag on me
because you had the passion for music already.
Yeah,
but you found out the drums might not be your ticket.
Yeah. So what happened was he's like, you suck at drums. You're horrible at this. And one day I confronted him and I was like, what is your deal, dude? And
what's the problem here?
He was like, calm down. Look, you and I are the only two kids who like punk rock and ska in this whole town. Learn how to play something else so we can start playing together. And that's Dave.
Yeah.
And so then I start learning how to play bass and guitar because Dave told me I sucked at the drums.
But you hadn't picked up a guitar before that time?
Never. I went and bought it because Dave told me to.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Never wanted to be a guitar player. I always thought I'd be, a big rock drummer.
Big drummer. You were going to be the next Neil Peart there at one time, huh? So you pick up a guitar, end of 8th grade, 9th grade, and start learning what kind of songs? You're saying punk songs, ska songs?
Yeah, right out of the gate. I've always been a huge Ramones fan.
Okay, so you start learning.
Ramones was the
Blitzkrieg Bob.
beginning. Yeah, right out of the gate. Obviously, like Green Day, Rancid. The first bass line that I remember nailing and being hyped is the end of East Bay. Journey to the End of East Bay.
Oh, yeah.
I remember being like, yeah.
From Out Come the Wolves.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, great bass line. Still stands the test of time. Now, are you into the Seattle bands at that time? Is that starting to happen? I mean, this is mid-90s?
Yeah, at that point in my life, I probably was really had this like kind of blinders on to that part because I just wanted to be into punk rock at that time.
To the big pop culture stuff.
And obviously, like, everybody had a copy of like Nirvana's Unplugged CD. And like, I wasn't a big Pearl Jam fan or anything like that, like a lot of those kids that we went to school with. And a lot of, like, in Enumclaw, a lot of the kids who were still into the Seattle stuff, the kids in the Soundgarden t-shirts were assholes.
Yeah.
So
you don't want to be part of that.
Yeah, like, so we were definitely doing our own thing. And there was a tight-knit group of us who were, into punk and ska before it hit the mainstream in our town. And so there was a tight-knit group of us that were getting beat up all the time. But then
it was the true underground in Enumclaw.
Yeah, exactly. That sentence is so funny.
Probably a very small underground at that time.
Yeah.
So in high school, you started the band Rocket in My Pocket.
Yeah.
And that's a ska band.
Yep.
You, David.
Yeah, and like 4 other people.
A couple other guys. You got horn section.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I remember some ska bands from high school, and they're actually really good, and I wonder what happened to those guys.
Yeah, we had a really good, it was good, man. We had a good run together. Like, it was like any high school band, but we ended up getting on a lot of college radio and like doing pretty well for ourselves.
Really? So there was recordings that were out being played.
Yeah.
Over the airwaves.
We had a record. We recorded one album, and it was called Grab Your Own.
Wow. Is any of that still available?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to tell you where it is, but yes.
It does exist somewhere.
I could send it to you.
That band's a couple years you guys play together?
Yeah, just the high school years, yeah.
And then after high school, that kind of fizzles?
Yeah, I joined days after high school. I dropped out of high school, and I joined a band called Pistol for a Paycheck.
And so you've never gotten a high school diploma?
No.
Wow.
Yeah, not at all.
And so you leave high school and music's it.
Yeah, I mean, that's why.
I
had no vision beyond that, and like I can't even say that I really like. I can't say that I was even had big dreams that I was going to do it. I just didn't need anything else.
But you were going to play the basements and get on the college radio, and that was good.
None of that even mattered. Like the fact that I was creating was like perfect for me.
I was like,
this is what I need to do. I used to I remember in total like teenage high school fashion, I remember having a conversation with this girl that I was dating at the time, and she was talking about what she wanted out of life, and I was like, I want a van and I want my guitar, and
I could say you manifested that at this point.
Yeah, so far doing good. But that was always enough to be creating and to be manufacturing good times with friends of mine. Was
so just always writing those songs in high school and then getting into Pistol for a Paycheck. Yeah. You knew that just creating this music was going to be enough.
Yeah.
To fuel your tank.
That's all I wanted. Yeah. And, and it all comes from obviously the military stuff. It's like feeling lonely from moving all the time. It's like when you create and then people care about that, they like it or whatever. There's a real warmness that comes from that fuels wanting to do more,
Yeah, there are people excited about your creativity or your art and remembering you. And finally having people remember your name.
Exactly. That was passion for me, man. I instantly was like, wow, okay, well, I guess it's what I got to keep doing.
So you guys do some albums with Pistol for a Paycheck?
Yeah, we did 3 records, I think.
3 full-length records?
Well, I did 3 records.
And you're just playing guitar for these bands. There's no vocals going on.
No. I mean, I would yell live sometimes and stuff, but it wasn't I wasn't doing harmonies. I wasn't singing. I didn't know how to. I'd never sang before. So.
You never thought of that either.
No, I hated it.
I went from drums to okay, now I'm going to be a guitar player.
Yeah, because Dave just kept pushing me into the spotlight so he could stay behind. Yeah, didn't have to take all the attention.
He wasn't interested in being a part of that.
No.
So Pistol for a Paycheck has out a couple albums. Anything notable?
We did an album called Cult Culture that did pretty well. The thing is with that band, it was this guy Kai Hillig, who's an amazing songwriter, and it was basically his baby. He wrote pretty much everything. And then a guy named Yosua from Washington, who's actually from a small town next to ours called Buckley. It's right next to Enumclaw. So we had known Yosua for a while, and he the two of them had this real great idea of this really. Oh man, just very weird but good rock and roll that was really loud, but there was no punk rock to it at all. And so we had another drummer, and then Dave had gone to college, and he had come back, and he joined Pistol for a Paycheck. And at that time, you could already see with that last record that there was a division happening.
And you and Dave wanted to go in your direction, which was the rock and roll, the punk rock.
We wanted to play punk, yeah.
And the other half of the band's kind of taking it into a different direction.
And at that time in Seattle, you've got things like These Arms Are Snakes, bands like that are like, doing great. And like the other two guys were just very inspired by that. They wanted to do very weird, very loud, like post-botch influence kind of music.
Probably made for a cool combination though at the time.
You know what? We had some great shows. We did some really good things, and I still am really good friends with both those guys.
And did you guys go out of town at all, or was it pretty much local?
As far as Salem, Oregon.
You guys got into Oregon.
Farthest we ever got. Yeah, we would take trips to Spokane and stuff, and it's a real bummer we didn't do more because I had some really good, genuine times with those guys.
Okay, so that starts to fizzle. Pistol for a Paycheck. Check out the album Cult Culture if you can find it. If not, hit up Rev and he might give it to you. We're going to take our first break, and then we're going to come back in and talk about Rough Chucker, which was kind of the inception of Success, and then talk about you and David's journey in that band and forming Success into the touring band they've became. We'll be right back with a little bit more with Rev. Alrighty, we are back with our guest, Aaron Peters, also known as Rev. And we were just kind of wrapping up with his early bands that he kind of had in high school and just after. And so after that, you kind of get into the southern part of Seattle, Georgetown, and you're living in a basement there with Dave, and you guys kind of start Rough Chucker.
Yeah, so obviously off the heels of that other band, we were like, okay, well, we were still in Pistol for a Paycheck for a minute when we started doing stuff for Rough Chucker, but so the thing is we were just recording stuff on our own, Dave had gotten back from college with a recording arts degree, and so like we were putting some of that to the test by doing these like stripped down home recordings, and I'd written some songs and we put it together, and we instantly just started looking for other band members.
And you're still looking for singers at that point?
Yeah. We went, that was a process because we had one guy who we loved to death from high school, who was a good friend of ours, but it just didn't work out, unfortunately. And then we tried out some people off Craigslist, which I don't know if you've ever done that, but that is like the worst thing in the world. Because, and not to say there's not anything good out there, but it's like people there grasping for whatever. So, you're getting like Hesher old dudes who host karaoke who like still want to be in like a Motley Crue kind of band.
Yeah, and showing up to the practice space, just totally different mindset than what you guys are at, being in your early 20s, trying to get a band rolling.
Yeah, we're like listening to this like, punk rock that we just wrote, and then it just not working. And so Dave finally was like, why don't you just do it? Like, there's a general theme here, right? Like, whenever we can't figure something out, Dave's like, just go do it.
It seems like he pushes you in a decent direction.
Every time, yeah. I really owe a lot to that dude for forcing me to be, like, more and more creative.
Kind of become that person that your parents were, where they were, adaptive to the situation and and really open to taking on those challenges that, make us who we are.
Yeah, so I started singing. Like, I just started singing. We just went for it. And
that's with no experience.
Nothing. I've never really
no vocal lessons ever in your history?
No.
And
if you
just practice.
Yeah. If you listen to those first couple of Rough Chucker EPs that we recorded on our own, it's pretty funny because it's like the only thing I did was I was like, all right, well, my voice is kind of raspy, right? So I was like, well, I love the boss tones. So I would just like scream along to like, the early like Boss Tones albums. I would just like lose it.
And just try and get somewhere between Dickie and yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And like, so then we'd go down into the studio and I would just try to kind of do that direction. And it ended up working out just because it was simple for us, really.
And when does Austin fall into Rough Chucker?
So we also got a bass player off Craigslist, and he was this kid who was a ripping bass player, but just a weird guy from Medford, Oregon, which is, if you're from Medford, it's probably pretty...
kind of where you land?
Yeah. He was just an odd dude, and... we played one show with him, the first show we ever played.
And he was coming out all the way to Seattle?
No, he had just moved to Seattle.
Okay.
And
but he grew up in Medford.
Yeah, and he was like just crazy, just way too punk for us. And so we play our first show, and we're like, this isn't going to work out. And Dave goes, well, what about Austin? And I was like, Austin? He's like, yeah, Austin Jones. And I was like, from high school? It's like the dude who was in all those like metal bands.
And so Austin went to high school with you guys in Enumclaw.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so he was one of the other musicians, but didn't quite fit the bill at that time.
Yeah, and we were all friends. Like, we were all good buddies, but it was like Austin was just, he rolled with a little bit different crowd than me and Dave. And so...
Did Dave know he was interested at that time?
I don't think so. I think they were just working together, and Austin happened to play bass.
Okay.
Because they were doing audio video stuff together for a company.
And you're saying Austin also has a degree in audio engineering?
Yeah, totally. And they had... I think they had just talked about being in bands in general, and we needed a bass player, and we knew Austin was a great dude. And Austin also has this like, there's almost this like unwritten thing. It's funny, you can see it in situations in Success all the time. It's almost this not talked about mentality of just like getting something done because it needs to get done.
That work ethic
comes from Enumclaw, yeah.
Yeah.
And so
I'm going from the old industry town.
We at least knew that he'd work hard if he was gonna like do it with us, and if he was gonna play in the band. And so Dave was like, "Well, we'll give him a tryout, okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, whatever." And so me and Dave are living in this house, this like small house in an alley in Georgetown, and we set up in David's bedroom and start playing, and instantly it's just super fun. And Austin, like,
and it feels good,
clicks right. And he's like, annoyingly, David and Austin have always been great at their instruments.
Yeah, I think every time watching Austin play, I just go, man, this guy who's playing so quick, dude, and almost flawlessly.
They're
most
both
of the time
always in the pocket. Like,
yeah,
always.
That probably comes from his history, interested in that prog rock and that.
I bet, yeah,
that metal kind of.
Well, and he also comes from a very musical family. Everybody in his family plays instruments. Everybody sings. Like, okay. His father.
That's where he gets that high harmony.
Yeah, exactly. I force him to do that. He actually sings at a lower register normally, and I always I'm like, I wrote you this, and it's like way higher, and he always gives me shit about it. But
he nails it. I mean, it always sounds good.
His father's drummer's name is Kevin Jones, and he's a well-known Washington folk artist.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. We might be able to find him if we searched, huh?
Yeah, he's great. Yeah, it's really, really good.
Really?
Yeah, and he's just a super, super sweet, solid dude.
So Austin has that in his blood.
Mm-hmm.
You guys solidify the lineup then at that point of you three.
To the
a
day.
Guitar player, a bass player, and a drummer that still exists. Yeah, over 10 years later.
Yeah.
And so Rough Chucker, they do some West Coast touring?
We did some small runs, yeah. We did some small runs down the coast and started pushing. At that time, too, we had me and Dave had moved to South Park and to a house, which is just behind Georgetown, just farther south in Seattle. And we had started renting a house that we called the Rough House. And that's when we start putting up bands. And that's like the linchpin to making any sort of connections is instantly we have this huge house that's kind of a collective house with us and some tattoo artists and a professional fixed gear bike rider. There's
wow, and being able to house people and hang out with them, for long periods or overnight, you end up making those connections. And
yeah, I always, when younger bands always go how does success get to where they are? How do you guys do it? What was the key? I'm we were nice to everyone.
And be grateful.
Yeah, I was we were an okay band for 8 years, and then we wrote one good album, but through those 8 years we were really nice to everyone. So
made a lot of friends.
Yeah, and
did all you could to help everybody.
Totally. And it helped a whole lot, we were able to put people up, and that's when we really started that's when we started cranking on it too. We recorded the first the self-titled album in that basement of the Rough House.
So where is the transition from Rough Chucker to success?
So we were having a problem with people Googling Rough Chucker because it's
just tough to find.
Yeah, Chukkar, like the bird. And so I don't know, it just was, it's funny because then we named the band Success, which you can't Google
which is
anyway.
Impossible to find anything on you guys, if you don't know what you're looking for.
Yeah, so there's actually a German techno pop band called Success too that people are always yeah, did you record this early record with a drum machine? And I'm no, dude, it wasn't us.
Yeah, heard you were doing 10 dates here in Austria. That's not us, man.
Yeah, so we recorded that first album in our basement, and we were playing a bunch. And
that's just you three, or is there another guitar player?
We had a guy at the time. I played guitar on that album.
Okay.
We had a guy at the time named Slosh, Andrew Slosh.
He lived up to his name, I would take it.
Yeah. At that time, he's way more put together these days, but at that time he was partying and having a good time, and he's just an old friend of mine from playing shows.
So you recorded that first album. You've recorded all of Success's albums in-house.
Yeah, for the most part, yeah.
It's been pretty much with you guys, at least, at the helm of it.
Yeah, well, and that was when we realized real early on that that's where the cost comes from for bands a lot is recording time,
Yeah.
is so expensive. So we were always looking to, people could chalk it up to saying it's DIY ethic or whatever, but really what it was just the necessity of not having money for us. So we were
it won't have to come out thousands of your own dollars to record an album.
And we were well, we have the means to do it yet, so let's just keep growing the means to do it better. We could keep adding things and keep learning processes to be able to start recording better albums so we don't have to pay. So, because at the time too, in Seattle, if you wanted to record a punk record, where were you going to go? You could go to somebody who was there's a lot of these dudes, at that time at least, there's a lot of dudes who were I did some stuff in the 90s with this band and this band,
And they're in a pro studio now and they want to have you pay a premium.
Yeah, well, and those dudes have no fucking clue what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I could be oh yeah, well, have you heard Ribbed? That's what we want it to sound like, and they would have no idea.
Yeah, and I've got kids sleeping on my couch that play in these bands all over the the West Coast. And they don't have a clue that's even happening.
Yeah, there was one dude who was striving to make anything we did sound like the Beatles.
Need some more 3-part harmonies in this.
But no, it was just it was just out of necessity and wanting to facilitate it, and there's a richness to doing it your own and having fewer people be involved, it
keeps it that much more pure.
It's warmer, it feels more like yours.
Definitely. So that about 2007, 2008, that self-titled Success album is released. Mm-hmm. You were saying with a guy from a band called White Baron.
No, we played with a band called, I think, the White Barons, and he was there.
Oh, okay.
And he was this dude named Mike, and he owned a brewery called Baron Brewing. And he was this monstrous, jolly man, this big German guy with these huge chops on his face and like an amazing giggle, like just a big, great guy. And we all loved his beer. They made this amazing Pilsner that was like super rad that we had all been drinking that time anyway. And so it started out with him just being like, "Do you guys need beer for practice?" And we were like,
always.
Yes. And so he started dropping off kegs at our practice spot, and he would just like tap it and like, like,
there you guys go.
Yeah. And he'd be
enjoy.
like, "Let me know when you want more." And so then one day he hits me up and he's like, "Man, I'm thinking about, I've always wanted to start a label. Can I put out a record for you guys?" And we were like, "Yeah, of course, dude." Like,
yeah.
And so we took some new songs and some songs from our old EPs, and we had him put, or that was that first record, the self-titled.
Kind of put together that.
Yeah, we put it together, and he put it out, and he called his label Bottle Cap Recordings.
And that can also be found still, I believe, on the Death to False Hope Records website.
Yeah, totally.
Available for free download.
Yeah. What was that dude's name? Scotty Sandwiches?
Scotty, yeah. He helped out, us also put out a few early EPs. And I think that's kind of when we tied in and kind of started meeting each other and hanging out. So yeah, you guys can still find that record. Our listeners, go to deathtoFalseHopeRecords.com and check that out. That comes out later, of course, with Death to False Hope. So 2008, 2009, you guys are touring with that record. Yeah,
we did some runs. And that's actually why, like, Slosh at that time, like, the touring was just too much for him. And so that's why he kind of, like, bailed out. And there's been little spots in our career where we've gone back to being a three-piece, and then we've, brought in somebody else and gone back to being a three-piece and brought in somebody else. So we lucked out that we always had the core of what you need,
Yeah, exactly. Having those three guys to always keep the direction going. So at that point, you're getting ready to work on the Elitist Generation. Mm-hmm. You're meeting a lot of the guys in San Diego that we have mutual friends. You said you'd played some shows with Ziggy.
Yeah.
Who a lot of folks will know from San Diego, and his band Breaker 19er.
Mm-hmm.
And you were also meeting the Bastards of Young from Sacramento.
Yep.
Who anybody who's went through there knows Sean and Pat and the Hills Gang. And so you guys are doing that. And when do you guys kind of start talking about networking and getting this community built?
So no one at that time was like, it was really hard to get punk shows going. It was really hard to get like people
just
to
anywhere.
book you. Yeah, we were having troubles. Even in Seattle, we had resorted to doing basement and house shows more and more because the clubs were just, not helpful at that time. And so we noticed that while going down the coast. And so me and Ziggy, actually, I believe I flew down to San Diego just to hang out with Ziggy. And we're walking around on the beach and we're talking. And we were like, man, we got to figure something out. There's got to be a way that we can just help each other instead of having to look outside and always getting turned down. And so,
yeah, let's really make this happen on our own.
Yeah, and
that's
so
what it's going to take.
Which is that same mentality with the recording thing. It's like, okay, when we add more people, it sucks. So like,
to use the word DIY over and over and over, but it's like, if you want it, make it happen.
Yeah, and like if you want it the way you want it, then like, don't bitch about it.
Yeah, make it so.
Yeah, and so then we're walking around talking about that, and we're bringing up different bands from different areas, and like bands from the Bay that we knew, and bands from Portland, and bands from Tijuana, and like all these people that we knew. And we're like, okay, what we do is we'll start a group, and in that group, when there's a band coming to your town that's in our group, you book their show, you feed them, you put them up, and you make sure they get paid. It all works.
Make sure there's
out.
Some gas money.
Yeah, and so we did that for a while. And Ziggy, we were walking around in like a gift shop, and Ziggy saw the La Loteria cards. And he saw
the Mexican bingo.
Yeah, and he saw La Escalera, and he was like, oh, like a ladder. And so like, steps down the coast. Like,
yeah, connecting all the links.
Exactly. And so that's where that came from. It was just birthed off of that idea.
And that was just him going through a pawn shop or a...
Yeah, you were just in some sort of little gift shop. And so, but it was the idea of like, yes, we're connected in one way, via music, via punk rock. Like, how do we make everything easier for everybody? So it just started as a group of bands that were tired of getting dicked around.
So that becomes the La Escalera group at that time. And like you said, you guys are setting up shows for each other. You guys making sure everyone's house fed, paid, and just starting to build this community on. So the Elitist Generation, a record comes out on La Escalera Records. So where does the label kick off?
So there was this dude named Will who he was around, like he was like, at shows and stuff in the South End, and he was real nice, real polite, and just a real funny dude. And he had been in bands back in the day in San Diego, and I think he just wanted to be more involved at that time. And he had like a t-shirt printing company that was already helping all of us by printing our merchandise, which is huge, which helps.
Yeah, giving you guys a reasonable deal to have merch, which is how you make money on the road.
Yeah, I mean, that was, he definitely like instantly was like helping. And he wanted to start a label. Him and Ziggy started a label together and called it La Escalera. And Will actually hit me up and had me write like a mission statement for the label when it first started, because it was all still a part of that same group,
Yeah, just that network of bands up and down the coast.
Yeah, and the idea of helping those bands out. And so the first thing they put out was a split between us and Bastards of Young.
And that was the Yeah Buddy split.
The Yeah Buddy split.
And that was Sacramento and Seattle, Bastards of Young and Success. And that was the first La Escalera Records release.
Yeah.
And that was, of course, our friend Will Castro. Everybody, most of our listeners will know him. So La Escalera starts taking off, and you guys start getting more bands involved. Mm-hmm. When the Elitist Generation comes out, are you still in Seattle at that time?
It's kind of convoluted around that time. I was in a relationship that was like, I was a little rocky, and right around there I had gotten married. And so I probably right after that, I would assume right after that record came out is when then me and my ex-wife moved to San Diego.
Okay.
We wanted to get out of town, and
so you put Success on the back burner for a moment.
Yeah, it was, and it felt wrong at the time. Like,
even leaving, you knew this wasn't the choice you wanted to make.
I was like, gosh, I don't know. Like San Diego sounded cool because it was that same feeling my parents had. It was like, I wanted that adventure. I wanted to go out. I wanted to do my thing, and I was newly married and stuff, so I like wanted to go do it. But so I had to put Success on the back burner. At that time, I had gotten in contact with Chris from Nothington, and I was going to be playing bass in Nothington. And so
you had some shows lined up with them.
Yeah, I had a tour lined up with them.
You had something exciting to look forward to.
Exactly. And I was still being musical. And also at that time, I was going to join Breaker Breaker One Nighter. Most people don't know that.
Really?
So
your and Ziggy's connection was that deep, you were going to start playing music?
Yeah. And, I actually practiced with them a bit, and it didn't work out. But
okay.
Yeah, I was going to, I played a show with them. I played a show with them in San Diego at the Casbah.
Okay, so you get down to San Diego for a short period of time, 2010.
Yeah.
You've got a run with Nothington. What does that turn out to be? It is a tour?
Yeah, it was a full U.S. tour and a long run. And at that time, to be fair, I was real, not doing well with the relationship that I had. The new marriage was just already rocky. And, I had just moved away from all of my friends.
Everything you knew. Everything you'd built in Seattle.
And so I was on the road with Nothington, and I think both them and I were not in the best spot. Their dynamic was kind of weird at that time, and me joining that was kind of weird too, because I was also coming from this band of people I grew up with,
Yeah, lifelong friends.
The connection that I have with those dudes is in our blood, and nothing against the guys in Nothington, but it just, I had such a drastic view. I was like, wow, so many parts of this seem wrong just because I'm not used to them,
Yeah, and having, the high school friendship with the other guys, that will always run so
I know
deep.
all their parents. I know all their family members.
You know what they do for the holidays.
Yeah.
You know every twitch they have and every
Exactly.
tick, so that really makes it something. So you end up on the road just for a month or so with Nothington. Mm-hmm. You come back, you decide that's not for you. Mm-hmm. And at that time, you decide San Diego's not for you.
My ex-wife decided San Diego wasn't for us.
Okay, so she ships you back to Seattle.
No, she just wasn't feeling it, and we moved back. Yeah,
and that was okay with you. You wanted to get back and back with the boys.
Well, so I actually really enjoyed living in San Diego. Okay. I was having a great time just being down there. I was really enjoying the city, I guess I should say. That's what I really liked. I liked being down there. I liked being at the beach, and I liked hanging out. I liked having a good amount of sun, and the job I had was great down there. I worked at a pizza shop for this dude, Luigi. He was one of the best bosses I ever had in my life. And he
got
was
to enjoy
great.
pizza.
Yeah, exactly. I was drinking beer, playing punk rock, and eating pizza all of the time. I was also at that point still making unemployment. So I was getting unemployment from my job in Washington that I had been laid off from. So when I was in San Diego, I was still getting paid.
You were doing fine.
Yeah, I was doing great.
And
I was having a good time.
Unemployment, having fun, working pizza, and playing punk.
Yeah, it was awesome.
And so you end up, or you say your ex-wife called it and said, we're going back to Seattle. Mm-hmm. You end up back there end of 2010.
Yeah.
Get back together with the guys in Success and start the album Life on the Rocks.
Yeah.
So we're going to take another break. We're going to come back and talk about Success kind of becoming the flagship band on La Escalera at that point, and then talk about you guys moving into working with Red Scare and Toby, and also the release Radio Recovery, and how that came to be. We'll be right back with a little bit more.
I can't make it through the day. I'm bowing out, another loss to the count. This is my resignation. I don't belong. Far be it from me, whatever the judgment be. Live for now, here, safe and sound. For when the ending comes, what else would you have done? So stand here now, my back against the crowd, and say, this is my resignation. I don't belong. Would you believe at the bottom of this broken heart, it's a brand new life just begging to start? There's no way you can change my mind, even if you try. All I see is escaping by the skin of my teeth. This whole time they've been after me, begging me to come into a life I'll never lead. So I say goodbye with a trail of gasoline. There's no need to wait for me. I'll be gone by the time the city sleeps tonight. So say your prayers, hope they keep you safe and clean. They never did a thing for me, except for waste my time and give it false hope in life. I'll never believe that all again. It's just like Bobby said, these times are changing, and they will until I'm dead. May as well delay them. It's inevitable to end. Why not go down swinging? This is my resignation. I don't belong. This is my resignation. I don't belong. Calling all mistakes. This is where we lay our heads down for another round.
All right, we are back with my guest, Rev. We're talking about him relocating back to Seattle and then getting to work on the album Life on the Rocks. So that album kind of puts you back together from everything that had just happened in San Diego. And at that time, you get a different guitar player,
Yeah.
It was Dan Gardner.
Yeah, we had a couple guys who would come in and out. There was a guy named Ian, who
Okay.
is still a really great friend of ours. There's a guy named Lance, who is absolutely one of my favorite people in the world. And Lance came in, but he, both those guys actually got jobs to being guitar techs and like going on tour with other bands and couldn't do our stuff at that time.
Found more of a career in it.
Yeah, and like both amazing dudes and still good friends. And then we still wanted another guitar player because with our record, the progression of every record, it became more and more layered.
Yeah,
You
bigger
know?
sound.
Yeah.
And like I had mentioned, Success is becoming, I mean, you guys were the name of La Escalera Records, you know, at that time, to me.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
when I met everyone, they're like, these are the, you know, this is the band that's really doing very well on this label.
We were just pushing.
Yeah.
You know,
and I think that was just like you said, that's just the work ethic. That's
Running,
just
running,
rolling.
running.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nonstop, you know, staying on the road. So you decide to get another guitar player.
Yeah, and we, you know, there was a guy, I had known a guy from playing shows in high school, actually, years ago, and then he kind of dropped off the map for a while, and I hadn't seen him. He had run into some bad times that I won't get into, but he was in a bad spot for a while, and so I didn't see him for a long time. And then I'm randomly at a Guitar Center, and Dan is there, and I'm like, you know, give him a big hug, and we start talking, and he starts telling me about what he's been going through and what he's been doing, and he had come out of a really bad situation, and he had done really well for himself getting out of it. And he was back up in Seattle, and so we started talking, and me and Dan just picked up right where we left off when we were friends 10 years prior to that. And
He was ready to play music.
yeah, and he had recorded some stuff on his own that was all right. And then I was like, well, you know, Success is looking for a guitar player, and Dan was like wanting to do that. He had sold merch for us on a tour, and he was like wanting to get into it, and so it ended up working out. And like, you know, I asked the guys if we could try him out. We tried him out, and it just clicked for a while.
So he jumps in. He's kind of part of the Life on the Rocks moment of Success.
Yeah.
And you guys, you know, continue the touring, continue the West Coast, building that ladder
Yeah.
that you guys had created. And that comes out as a 10-inch. I think that's still available.
Yeah, it is.
If you go to the La Escalera distro.
That was, I mean, that record too was such a turning point in my life, because it was when I was so low from my divorce and moving, and like everything felt so unsettled that I had worked really hard to find focus. And that album was me finding focus. Like that album was me
Being
going,
able to write again.
yeah, and to be able to be motivated about writing, you know?
Yeah.
Like, instead of writing, like, you know, really sad songs about the shit that had happened to me, being like, nah, fuck this. Like, I'm gonna write great music, and that's how I'm gonna get back at my ex-wife, is like, I'm gonna make killer records, and like, you know.
Yeah, and continue your dream and your passion.
Exactly.
And
I was
show
like-
that it wasn't maybe it's something that she had thought it was.
Yeah,
like
and,
fake
and
or-
not to be harsh, but I mean, in that time, you exactly think like that. At that time, I was like, the best thing I can do right now is prove that person wrong. And so, you know, years later, that's not what it is. It just became me working through those issues, as I can see, you know, the issues of
I
losing
think
her
it's
and stuff.
noticeable on the records, the change, even of the tone of the record. They're brighter.
Oh, yeah.
They have more life.
Yeah.
In that way, you know, there's great songs in that earlier stuff, but when you hear "Life on the Rocks" and that first track on that, I always remember it's like, whoa, shoot, they're getting ready to, you know, have some fun here.
Oh,
now.
yeah, she got to give.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like starting to roll, you know, and you guys put the cover on that album, which was fun.
Oh, yeah.
You know, what was the Spin Doctors? Is that what that was?
Yeah, we covered a Spin Doc. You know, there's a story behind that, though. You know how, like, I'm sure you've asked someone, like, here, like, what's the first album you ever bought with your own money?
Probably Dookie.
Dookie? So that's a great one. Me and Dave, when we first met back in the 8th grade there, we asked each other that question, and both of our first records was Pocket Full of Kryptonite by the Spin Doctors. And so we came back to
So
do
there was
that.
an early mutual love for this.
Yeah, and you know what? If you yell it out sometime, not that cover, but me and Dave and Austin can jam a good amount of cuts off that record.
Yeah, there's still history in that. So you guys roll with that, and then as that slows down, you're doing a lot of booking inside of Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
You're helping all the bands. You're still living the motto that you're preaching. You know, that
Still to this day.
and still helping whatever bands you can.
Yeah,
housing them.
I just moved into a new apartment, and we figured out how we could house bands there.
Yeah, you got to make that happen. So you said you're helping book the bands like the Cobra Skulls,
Yeah.
and Teenage Bottle Rocket, and then you said there was a big Lawrence Arms show that you book.
Yeah, so I get this. So I mean, that's probably a good point to talk about Toby. So Toby from Red Scare is from Enumclaw, and the history that we have is we both knew who each other were, And through the Cobra Skulls, I had talked to Toby about just different things, punk rock. I don't even know if he puts it together, but I had emailed him a while ago and sent him an album. This is probably around I think I sent him the Elitist Generation. And I remember I was like, is it cool if I email you this? And he was like, oh, you're that guy booking shows in Seattle. And I was like, yeah, it's Aaron Peters from Enumclaw. And he was like, holy shit. He was like, oh, okay. And he's like, there's punk rock in Enumclaw. And I was like, well,
Not much.
Yeah. And so I sent it to him, and he was actually, I've heard some stories about him either just not responding or being calloused about how he feels about records, but he was real nice to me at that time. He was like, no, this is good. It's got potential. Keep working on it,
Yeah, keep writing, keep recording.
But I don't even think he remembers having that. It was a while ago.
But he graduated from the same high school as you guys.
Yeah, his brother was my soccer coach.
Wow, okay.
Yeah,
so there is
good old
ties
Bill
there
Jag, yeah.
to the old town in Enumclaw.
Yeah.
And so he reaches out to you to book these shows.
Yeah, he says the Lawrence Arms are coming through, which was a big one for us because me, Dave, and Austin were all really huge Lawrence Arms fans.
Yeah,
obviously.
great records.
Man, yeah. And we had all, a lot of those records were mental association records for us. So when you hear them, they take you right back to the spot you were,
Yeah, you relive that time.
Yeah, and so I booked the show for them, but Toby was like, I want to do an acoustic show with Brendan the day before. And so I booked an acoustic show for me and Brendan, and we played the day before, and it was fucking killer.
Good turnout.
Yeah, it
good
was
times.
packed house. It was at the Kraken.
Okay.
So it was sweaty. And I think they hit capacity that night.
Sold out show.
I made a bunch of money, had a great time. And that following day, we played with the Lawrence Arms, and we opened that show, and I remember specifically Brendan walking out at one point while we were playing.
While you're on stage.
Yeah, and I was like, oh no.
And you take notice of it.
Yeah, I was
here
like,
we
fuck.
go.
It's a huge bummer. I was like, man, that sucks. I was hoping he would watch it.
Yeah, or be captured by
But
it.
he came back in with Toby. And so, from what Brendan told me, that was when he was like, you're an idiot. Come watch this band. We need to put out this record. Because I don't know how many people know that Brendan has a good amount of input, at least in early Red Scare stuff.
Yeah,
so.
his hands are in there.
Yeah, and I know that the two of them, him and Toby, are really good friends, and Toby trusts his opinion on a lot of stuff, and they're both really smart guys. They really, really are. They're both really, really smart at what they do. They're both really good at marketing. They're both really good at strategy, and so...
yeah, so everything's a strategic step, and they make a plan.
Yeah, and I know that...
and he pulls Toby in to you playing and says, hey, check this out.
So Toby does come watch, and then when I literally just walk to the bar, and Toby hands me a beer, and he's like, so this is exact words. He goes, so you're going to make a fucking record or what? And I was like, okay.
Yeah, and that was it.
Yeah.
That was the handshake deal.
Because I think Toby had this, I would assume that his mentality had to be these douches that I used to go to high school with, that
Yeah, from the little town that I ran as far as I could.
Why would I ever do that, But no, Toby still has a lot of ties in Enumclaw, and you know what, man?
Yeah, I feel that you guys both, and your band and Red Scare have just a love for that town.
Yeah.
It's where you grew up, and I think you can never forget your roots. And
I think Dave's probably going to move back there.
Really?
Yeah, sooner.
In his plans.
Sooner, yeah. Because it's a great place to raise a kid. It
Yeah.
really is. And Dave has a beautiful 3-year-old daughter, and so they're thinking about schools and stuff right now, and
it's just a mild town to do that
it's
at.
so chill. But it's also close enough to Seattle that you could take the bus to go to a show and stuff like
hit the
that.
big city.
Yeah, but you could also escape to where you're not going to have too many problems.
Yeah, I think that's what we all look for as we get a little older too.
Yeah.
So, anyways, Toby says, "Let's do a record. Mm-hmm. When are you going to record me a record?"
Yeah,
and you guys get to work at that point on Radio Recovery. Is it already written? I mean, are the songs...
Some of it. I mean, we grabbed some of it from older albums, and I had been just working on stuff. I'm always writing songs. People always ask me my process, and I always tell them I write 30 crappy songs, and I keep 2 of them that are awesome.
Yeah,
and
so you're constantly just pushing through chords, progressions, melodies.
The majority is garbage, and then, it's horrible. But I grab a few, and I have some new ones, and Toby wants to grab some from the records people didn't hear as much, and so...
Yeah, because it's going to get a new exposure.
Exactly.
At this point, it's going to get off the West Coast. It's going to, have a national outlet.
Well, and because we were doing all of it on our own, we never had an outside voice. We never had anyone come in and go, this should be different.
So with Radio Recovery, you get a producer.
We do. We get Steve Risen from Toronto, who prior to that had worked on the early Flatlanders records.
Okay, so he's got experience in the field.
Junior Battles. Yeah, he had worked with some bands like Zebrahead and stuff too. But he was already doing really well. we had a connection with him. We flew him into our studio that we built, because we built a recording studio called Bottle Cap Recordings in Seattle, to be able to facilitate our own recording, you know.
Yeah, and to keep up with these ideas and all these songs you're writing.
Exactly.
Throw it on the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah, and so we fly Steve in, and he sleeps on my couch for 2 weeks, and we record that album. And it was also really important that Radio Recovery happened in Seattle.
You wanted to record it there. You didn't want to do the run out to...
We almost recorded in Chicago.
Okay.
That was another talk, because the guy who did like a lot of the Alkaline Trio stuff, I don't remember that dude's name, but that was another suggestion we had. And I wanted to work with Stephen Edgerton, because I'm a huge Descendants fan, obviously. And he had been doing good things already for Red City Radio at that point.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh man, maybe we'll go out there. And then
it turns out Seattle was the place to do it.
We wanted to do it there. Yeah. And so we flew Steven, and we rented some gear that was more expensive than what we had at the studio. Not a whole lot, but we rented some stuff and borrowed stuff from friends. That's the other thing too, is we borrowed stuff from like Austin's dad. So it was this really like community driven.
Yeah. Just put together this console to create this record.
And so Steve comes in, and he was amazing. He came with this dude named Reese too, who like was this crazy party animal, but he would drink and smoke himself to sleep and go crazy, and then wake up and edit drums perfectly for like 10 hours.
Just sit there hungover,
dude,
just battle through it.
He was amazing. Yeah,
he's dead on.
He was a machine. Yeah.
So that record comes out on Red Scare Records.
Yeah.
Meets a great acclaim. I mean, great, good reviews. I feel it did really well.
Best reviewed record I've ever been on, for sure. At least from a big populist kind of view.
Yeah, really enjoyed the record myself. You know,
thanks, man.
From the older songs to the newer, you know, to the songs that weren't on the previous records. That record comes out and ends up landing you some pretty big shows, including you guys playing the Punk Rock Bowling Festival.
Yeah, that was awesome.
What was that experience? I mean, you're talking main stage with, you know, Rancid on the lineup, and going back to Dickie and the Boss Tones are playing.
Yeah, man, it was mind blowing. Anti-Flag played that. Sick of It All played that. It was insane, because I mean we'd already done more than we ever thought we would at that point, you know.
And this is a big major market festival.
Yeah, and like, you know, there's where daytime, there's still a sea of people there, you know?
Yeah.
And we definitely were taking big breaths, and we're just like, oh, shit, like, we're in it now.
Let's get through this one.
This better be good. And we killed it. We did a great job. We had Joey from the Briggs come up and do a Stiff Little Fingers cover with us. That was fun. It was huge to do that, man, because like...
You met a lot of people, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I'll say what's more important than the fact that we were on this big-ass stage playing all these people. What was more important was I looked over and saw that guy. I saw Dickie Barrett side stage bobbing his head.
Yeah.
You know, he was singing along to the Stiff Little Fingers cover. You know, I looked over and saw the guy. So, man, I feel like all these people that I had looked up to, just, you know, from knowing their music,
are enjoying your tunes now.
And that was huge for us.
Yeah.
You know, like that's what we always wanted. We wanted to just be peers, you know? Like,
yeah, and be part of this, the thing that you've loved for 20 years.
You want to feel involved. And so that was cool. Real quick, fun story is like, I went off stage and I was like on cloud fucking 9. I was like flying, and I was like, all our gear gets off, and I remember cracking a beer and walking to the side and just going,
yeah, we survived.
And immediately I get spun around, and there's the guitar player from Sick of It All, and he's huge. He's like big, buff, tattooed.
He's fired up.
He's got this crazy, spiky, flat top, and he's like, "Hey, man!" And I was like, "What's up, dude?" And he's like, "That was some good shit, some real shit, like some Minor Threat, Ian McKay shit. You got to keep doing this. You got to keep staying positive. This is fucking awesome." And I was like, "Thanks, bro." As he's like 2 inches in front of my face, like spitting all over me. And he was like, "You keep going, okay?" And I was like, "All right, dude."
Deal.
And Austin walks over and he's like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I just think the guitar player from Sick of It All screamed compliments at me for about 2 minutes."
Yeah, I mean, what an experience that must have been.
It was awesome,
you know, like
man.
you said, to look over and see those guys bobbing their head and be a part of that. And that must have been huge. You guys then end up going on some great tours from that record, including stints with Melancholy, 7 Seconds, the Swingin Utters.
Yep.
I mean, what were those experiences?
Those are amazing.
Those are the bands you dreamed of playing with, and then you're on the road with them and becoming friends with them.
You know, and we lucked out that those were some of the bands we got to play with, because with guys like 7 Seconds and guys like the Swingin Utters, those are like street cred bands. Like those guys, you know, they've been
doing it for almost 30 years, probably.
In the good and the bad. You know, they have
the thick and
the ups and the downs. They're still around. You know, me and Kevin, Kevin Seconds were talking on that tour, and he was like he's always so sweet to me and always so encouraging through a bunch of shit that I've been through. We're still really good friends, and but during that tour, he was very like, he was like, you have to keep going. Like, you guys got something good. You gotta keep pushing and keep pushing. And so it was cool to like have that, like I needed someone whose first record came out 4 years before I was born.
Yeah, and live the highs and the lows, like you said, to tell you, hey, man, when you hit a speed bump or you hit a little drought, keep going.
Yeah, remember why you do it.
Yeah.
That was the lesson I took from Kevin, was like, remember why you do it.
Yeah, and I think bands like 7 Seconds and Swingin Utters teach us all that, You see them still rolling and still showing up and having a good time on stage.
Totally.
And it's like, man, that's where I'd like to be in 20 years.
The guys from 7 Seconds taught us how to be a band. And like, we already knew who we were, but they taught us how to be a band.
And how to act on the road.
How to not take shit from promoters, how to make sure you get paid, but also be incredibly polite and incredibly respectful, and always like never take for granted the fact that anyone is at your show. If someone's at your show, they deserve everything from you.
Because they deserve the same set as if you're playing the big stages at the Punk Buckle.
And we didn't need that lesson, but we watched them do it every fucking night without a complaint.
Yeah.
And that was incredibly humbling.
Yeah, to the big crowds and to the tough Monday nights.
Yeah, exactly. It was cool, man. And we ended up doing 2 tours with them, an East and a West. And that was cool because they asked us to come to the second one. And then Melancholy on the other side of that is like, then we were playing with Melancholy, and these were like, 3,000 cap rooms, and they're like selling out.
Playing little theaters and stuff.
Yeah, and it's huge, House of Blues and stuff like that. And it was cool because we all love that band, and we lucked out just like 7 Seconds that they happen to be really amazing people. And it was cool to just bro down with them, but also see that side of it too, where it's like, you're in a green room every night and you've got food every night.
Yeah, there's food and there's all the beer you can drink.
Yeah, it's like, and there people are popping their head. We were in Santa Ana playing the Observatory, and this girl pops her head in, and she's like she works there, and she's like, are you guys doing okay? Do you guys need anything else? You guys need any beer? And we're like, yeah, we're totally okay, but thank you. And she starts laughing, and I was like, what? And she's like, no bands thank me as much as you guys do. Because like everything she did, we were like, thank you very much. Thank you so much. You don't have to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, just coming from where you came from.
And we also just weren't used to that,
Yeah, but I think that shows the professionalism in your guys' band.
Yeah, I think so.
And like you said, you may have learned that, yourselves, but also torn with these lifers.
Yeah.
And saying, hey, man, be grateful.
Yeah.
If there's nobody there, be happy. At least you're up there on stage.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, like, at the end of the day, what we do with guitars and drums and keyboards and all this, what we do with that stuff, it's cool, and it'll leave a staple, or it'll leave a stamp on. People will always be able to touch our music and be like, that's what we did. But if we were dickheads while we did it, we were still dickheads while we did it,
Yeah, and that will be remembered.
Like, that's the thing, is like, it's more important to us to leave a stamp as being good people than it'll ever be to, like, be big rock stars or, like, play huge shows. Like, fuck that. When I die, I want people to say that I was rad. That was a good
that
dude,
treated me right and played music. So there was some more changes in the band at that time. Dan leaves the band for other reasons, and you guys pick up Sean.
So Sean had done merch for us, and at the time, me and Sean were working for Pearl Jam. We were working in Pearl Jam's warehouse.
Wow.
Yeah, like, how Seattle is that, right? Like,
and that could be a whole episode on its own there.
Yeah. It's just, it was weird.
But you had a run-in with Eddie, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Times,
yeah. So me and Sean are working together. Sean had also gone through a bad relationship that he had just come out of, and he was looking for some direction, and he did merch for us, and then
he had played in other bands locally.
Yeah, he was in Coos-Bane, and we had played a bunch of shows with them, and I had just kept in contact with Sean when he had moved to LA and then came back home, and me and Sean had always kind of had a really deep relationship, and one of those like get drunk and cry about stuff that sucks kind of relationships, and you need those friends, And so when we were working together, I was like, man, well, fuck, why don't you just come play for us? And so it worked out, and Sean started playing keys, though, because here's the thing, like, I was getting tired of all these guitar players bailing, like,
let's try something different.
Yeah, well, we had already added keys in. Dan was still in the band when Sean joined, but I wasn't thinking another guitar player. I was like, fuck, I'll just handle this,
Yeah.
And so we had put Keys on Radio Recovery, and it sounded great, and I loved it. And
The fullness that it creates.
And we're all huge classic rock fans. So the Tom Petty vibe, the Allman Brothers vibe. I know it's so not punk to
The
say
arena,
that.
sound almost, in these small clubs.
Well, I'm a huge Journey fan, so it's like, you know that, right? It's like, I want that big. I want to put on a show. I want to have a huge sound that does a lot for you when you're seeing it live. And so Sean taught himself how to play keys within 6 months, and he had never touched a piano really before, and so he taught himself how to play, and then came and joined. And then fast forward years later, Sean had always been a guitar player, and
you decide let's fill it up even a little bit more.
Yeah,
let's fill the sound out.
We ended up meeting Andy, and Andy had been around Seattle for a while, and we had seen him in a few different bands, but never really became friends. He was good friends with a band called Down We Go that we used to play with back in the day that were really good from Seattle. And I met him, I think, at a show through those guys. And he was just always very I'm a big fan of your music. And there was one show, I was bartending at El Corazon in Seattle. And there was a show where there was a touring acoustic country act, and all of the openers had bailed. And they were going to cancel the show. And the club owner contacts Andy, and he's like, yeah, I'll show up and play. And he floored me. He was fucking incredible.
Solo.
Just with an acoustic guitar. And he has an amazing voice. He's super talented. He also is real, he's got no genre. He's
He's just playing.
Yeah, and he just plays what he feels, and he's a great songwriter. And so I was like, man, we should stay in contact. And so we ended up, I was like, can you play keys? And he's like, I can figure it out.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
So you end up with Andy on keys, Sean on guitar.
Yeah, I think Sean actually contacted Andy originally about playing keys, yeah.
And that is the current lineup. Great. Seen you guys play last night.
It's the best.
Yeah.
I'm having such a good time playing with these dudes.
Currently an epic show. I really, really, really like what you guys got going on stage.
Thanks, man.
Like I said, it fills up the small clubs like you're playing the arena, and it feels, you guys are showmen at this point, yourself.
I appreciate that.
And so coming up, you guys, another success record has been written, and you hope to record it next year, 2017.
Yeah, so we got one kid in the band.
18, sorry.
Yeah, you're good. We got, Dave has a daughter, has a 3-year-old, and Austin's going to have a kid soon. So we're excited about that, but we're also
the family's growing.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing is that Enumclaw is still in there. So it's Austin needs some time to be a new dad and do new dad stuff. And so we're going to take a break for a little bit, but
you and Andy have a side project?
We do. Yeah. The Drowns.
And that's recording into this year.
Yeah. We'll be recording it hopefully in December with Pat in Sacramento.
And hopefully touring a lot next year with that.
That's the whole reason that project is happening, is just to be on the road.
Keep on the road, keep honing your craft at that.
Yeah, I mean it's fun. It's really garagey, very stripped down, but super fun.
Rock and roll.
Yeah, it's very it's just super lo-fi is what we're going for. So it's just been fun.
It's been fun. Compared to the huge production you're doing with Success.
So much less pressure.
Go up and play.
Yeah.
So a new Success record to come. The Drowns record's coming.
Yep.
Anything else in 2018 we can look forward to? You said possibly a solo record?
Yeah, I'll put something out by myself. Probably with you guys.
Hey, let's do it.
Let's hope so.
I look forward to hearing the solo EP. I really encourage all my friends to do that, and I think that you could definitely handle the stage, on your own with a guitar, dude. And
it's nerve-wracking. That's my only deterrent.
Yeah, there's real pressure when it's stripped down, in every sense.
I hate it, but I think it forces me to be creative. Because I have to write good songs.
Yeah, and then you've got to fill the room with just that guitar.
There's no other instrumentation, so
it definitely can be done, and I think you do a great job at it.
Thanks, man.
I want to thank you for coming out here.
Of course, man.
I really appreciate you coming in. Is there any last words you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I think I'll if they made it all the way to the end, I hope that the one part, because I talk too much.
Yeah.
The one part that they take is that ups and downs show up. Just stay focused. I'm in such a great spot now through all the BS that I ended up going through. My friends are having beautiful children.
You're remarried in a great relationship.
I am so fucking happy.
So hang in there is a message.
Yeah, that's the thing, man. We all have our own stories, and just make sure you're still making a story that's not going to bore somebody.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate you coming in and sharing yours today.
Of course, brother.
We will be signing out here, episode 10, Alternative Discussion West. Thanks again for coming in.
All right, thanks, bud.
so hard being a God-free youth without anyone to look up to, but soon you'll find a savior in you. But on a cold, dark night, empty bottles will do. So nihilism has a good ring to it, but the tone is sharp. You're stuck in your ribs, you can't breathe out. The smoke you breathe in, you're left with dirty glasses again. Working hard this 9 to 5, probably be here until I die. Where do you go when you don't believe there's a heaven? Is it worth it to be a man? Or is it all in a master plan? We will never know till it's too late. Wasting time praying for gold gates. Open up, let me in. High fives, wasted lives, my friends. I wish I had held you again till the dawn of next morning came creeping in. Working hard at this 9 to 5, probably be here until I die. Where do you go when you don't believe there's a heaven? Whoa, 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 whoa. Working hard at this 9 to 5, probably be here until I die. Where do you go when you don't believe